Recently, I reviewed the RG353P, and I was pretty critical about it considering that the Retro Pocket 3 exists, so it made it difficult for me to recommend. In fact, I was actually kind of brutal when it came to my review, but I still stand by everything I said. So what makes the RG353V different to me? Well, it's mostly the price, but I also prefer the ergonomics on this one. However, some of my complaints from the RG353P still remain. So introducing the RG353V and not the VS. So let's dive right in. And this video is sponsored by Zenslabs, the makers of what is now my new favorite drawing tablet. I mean seriously, what they offer here is quite ridiculous, and it dumbfounds me how this is pretty much the only brand doing this right now. So in the box for this tablet, you do get the tablet itself with the necessary cable, and you get a case that includes two styli, the Bluetooth receivers for wireless use of the tablet, and some extra pen tips. You also get this protective bag where you can fit all of your accessories, and the inside is made of this beautiful and very soft material that will keep your gear protected. You can also get this quick keys accessory that allows for shortcuts as you desire, and these are fully remappable. These even display what the shortcuts mean on the screen, which is incredible. But most importantly, the performance is incredible, and I hereby declare this to be the best starting kit for any student or animation enthusiast. You simply can't top this regardless of which other kit like this one you mention. So if you are interested in art at all and you want to give it a try, then click on my link and then you will set yourself up for greatness from there. This is the most comfortable set that I have ever used, and especially because of the stylus itself, since it even has an eraser tip, which you will only find on some of the highest end drawing displays. And this is actually really incredible and useful to have with a device like this one. And not to mention that the surface is going to be incredibly smooth and just very nice to draw on. I absolutely love it. So get yourself the best starting kit out on the market. This is going to be the Zenslab Pen Tablet and the Zenslab Quick Keys. So get yours today and start creating amazing artwork. Links down below, and thanks to Zenslab for sponsoring this video. The exterior design consists of plastic with this gritty matte texture to it. This feels really good, and while there are also some grooves around the back to add some grip to this device, this is really just a good design for portable use overall. It feels so well built and designed, especially when compared to a similar product like the Powkity RGB20S, which feels more like a toy in comparison. Anbernic sent me the transparent purple model, so I can't say that every color will feel the same, but this one feels really nice. Another thing to note is that all of the I/O that you will find here is quite abundant. On the front, you're going to get your typical set of buttons and a speaker right in the middle on the bottom portion. The buttons feel really nice and properly sized for a device like this. There are complaints here as the buttons are as good as ever from Anbernic, but the thumbsticks are Nintendo Switch styled. I'm used to the feeling, but the positioning feels pretty off. You have to readjust your grip entirely in order to be able to use them, and you can say the same about the RGB20S, but the overall positioning of the RGB20S over here and the shape itself also does make it more comfortable for use in that sense with the analog sticks all the way on top. So I'm not too sure about the choice of including the analog sticks around the bottom. It's not what I would have done. But the difference is that the RGB20S's positioning of the sticks is still manageable because of the overall layout. On Anbernic's offering, that's not the case, and it makes using the sticks pretty uncomfortable. More on that later when we talk about the gaming performance. On the right, you're going to find a sleep-wake button, a reset button, and your two micro SD card slots. On the left, you get a volume rocker. On the top, you get a USB-C port, mini HDMI port, and a headphone jack. On the bottom, there is another USB-C port, but this one is going to be for charging. On the back, you're going to find your trigger buttons, which feel pretty good. They're really nice and clicky, feeling like high quality buttons to press when used. Not at all like the ones in the RGB20S. You can feel pretty safe about these. Overall, I do like how this device is designed, but the thumbsticks need to be reimagined. The positioning, at least. This device features a 3.5-inch 640 by 480 IPS display that is touch enabled, and it does look pretty good. You will notice that this device has pretty thin bezels, which allows content to pop more and cover more of this device. I like it. I like the colors, the saturation, the brightness, even if it doesn't get too bright and might not be ideal for playing outside under the sun. Not that that will be much of an issue for me as winter is coming, but genuinely this is a really good screen that I have zero actual complaints about. So the single front-firing speaker sounds alright. You won't be covering it or anything like that with your hands, so you will get the full experience at all times, but it doesn't get that loud, even if it does still sound pretty decent. So have a listen. So this device features an RK3566 CPU, 1GB of RAM, and 16GB of internal storage with a 3200 mAh battery, which is actually pretty big. This device is virtually identical to the RG353V, and from here on out, the similarities will become abundantly apparent. So there are going to be two models of this device right here, the RG353V, which is the one that I have, and the 353VS, which is actually the inferior version as it only boots into Linux, and it's the cheaper model. I have the RG353V, which boots into both Linux and Android, all depending on what you want, so do keep that in mind. For the rest of this review, I will only talk about the Android experience since this is what I'm mostly interested in, because normally you should have more flexibility and better performance through Android, so I will only review the Android side of things with this device. And I must say that Android is extremely bare bones on this device. It does come with pre-installed emulators, which is an absolute must if you're going to give us a device without the Play Store. Again, what the fuck? Why did they ever think that shipping an Android device without the Play Store was a good idea? This is exactly the case with the RG353V, and I really dislike that aspect about it. It doesn't defeat the purpose of Android outright, but it means that you will be sideloading everything else that you need, if even possible, since you do at least get Google Chrome included. But this should not be the case. Android kind of sucks as an OS on this device as it is. Now finally, let's get into actual game performance. So let's begin with the GBA, and I tested out Sonic Battle for this test like I always do, and of course it performed exceptionally. GBA is very easy to emulate and very difficult to mess up, even if it is on a budget device, but this one isn't really too cheap, so it better handle GBA well. But if you were curious, it's a great experience. It's not the same aspect ratio as the GBA, so you will get black bars on the top and bottom of the screen, but it's very minor and you probably won't notice it right away unless you're looking for it, but the bars are there if you're still curious. Not a big deal. I think that the game looks beautiful and runs beautifully, and this should be the case for just about every single other GBA game, so no worries there. Now let's move on to SNES. I tested out The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on the SNES 9X EX Plus emulator, and it runs really well. Actually, I was really impressed to see how it looks on this device, as SNES just seems perfect for it. The game fills the entire screen and looks like it just fits really well on this device. I would say that SNES is probably the ideal system to play on the RG353V, and it genuinely impressed me. Hopefully the gameplay on screen shows what I mean, because it does probably require showing in order to properly communicate what I'm trying to say about SNES performance on this system. Highly recommended, and if you wanted a great machine for SNES that's maybe larger than the Mii U Mini, then I would look at this device for sure. Now let's get into N64 performance through the M64 Plus FX Pro emulator. I tested out Ocarina of Time, yet another Zelda game, and performance won't be perfect here. In fact, this is when we start to see some of the shortcomings of this chipset when it comes to 3D titles, but specifically N64 in this case, though it does become harder to justify with more recent systems, as we will see pretty soon. There are going to be some minor stutters here and there, but they're minor with N64, so honestly I had a pretty good time playing N64 games on the system because performance was mostly pretty stable, but there are going to be those hiccups to keep an eye out for. The games do also fill the entire display, which with such thin bezels just looks really nice on this device. For the vast majority of N64 games though, maybe not all of them I would say, I would still recommend the system, or at least still get it if you wanted to play some N64 but mostly wanted it for SNES. Now let's go ahead and talk about PlayStation 1 performance using the DuckStation emulator. I tested out Mortal Kombat 4, and to be honest, I did not think that it looked all that good. It looks stretched since it doesn't fill the full screen, and it will give you black bars on the sides, which makes it feel like the games are going to be vertically stretched. You can stretch the game to fit the display, and it will look better to me, but not everyone will like doing so, because honestly, it still feels stretched, which is not something that I would have expected from this display, but other games won't look so jarring this way, so it is worth considering. Still, as Mortal Kombat 4 and other games like it that have a more realistic, with an asterisk, look to them, will look a bit odd on this display no matter what. But performance overall is pretty good, and I didn't have any issues to report when it comes to how well it runs. Next is PSP through the PPS's PP emulator. I tested out a simple game like Final Fantasy IV, and no matter how you slice it, it will look very stretched and not too good on this display since PSP games are supposed to run at close to a 16:9 aspect ratio, so naturally games won't look very good. But how is the overall performance in a game like this? Well, it won't be perfect and probably not really worth the effort either because there are still going to be some stutters to deal with on top of the unwieldy stretching of the display. So with more demanding games such as God of War, you will definitely feel the heat, as this device does struggle to run PSP to an extent and definitely will not be able to run every game in the PSP library. In fact, in Final Fantasy IV, there were times of extreme lag in terms of video and audio, so it's not really worth it here, to be frank. Now here are going to be some systems that will run extremely poorly, but I figured that I would do it anyway to include it in this video so that you can see the limits of the RG353V. This is the PS2 Performance through the Aether SX2 emulator. On a simpler game like Naruto Ultimate Ninja 3, performance is awful. It runs really slowly with extreme lag on this device. It's absolutely unplayable, as you will see on screen, and it will not be an enjoyable experience whatsoever. So clearly, PlayStation 2 is not a system that you should get this device for. But will it be any different when it comes to GameCube? Well, even when using the Dolphin MMJR emulator, which is better for this kind of APU and OS, you will still get poor performance with GameCube. Take Beautiful Joe, for example. There are a lot of audio stutters and a ton of frame rate dips, which cause a lot of issues with the game. It does go from 60 FPS to 20 FPS in a split second at all times, making the system and just about any game on it unplayable. So you will not have a good time playing GameCube games here either. Now, moving on. Now let's go ahead and talk about battery life, and I would say that this is pretty good overall. You should expect about 3 to 4 hours on the usual, which is pretty decent if not pretty good for a device like this, so I can't really complain there. So in conclusion, I do think that this is better than the RG353P, but this is just a matter of preference, I would say. I prefer how retro games look on this device overall, and I do prefer the price tag on this one as well. It just feels like a better deal. For 120 bucks, technically you are still losing out as it costs the same as the better performing Retro Pocket 3, but I can recommend this device for more easily because of the overall feeling of this device and how good certain emulators will look on this device. If you want to play SNES, even the N64 in this form factor and with this good of a build, then it's hard not to recommend. Because frankly, I really enjoyed my time with this device as it is. It's built so well and runs those lower end systems so well that I can recommend it if you're looking into those in particular, and the build by itself might be enough to justify this price. But if you're looking for a raw performance for this price, then just get the Retro Pocket 3. I made a review of it as well, so do go ahead and check it out. But yeah, I actually like the RG353V. So thank you so much for watching this video all the way up until the very end. I do very much appreciate it. Now, I am going to be leaving affiliate links to Anbernic's site for this device down in the description. So if you were to use my affiliate link, I would very, very much appreciate it because you would really be supporting the channel there. So again, it would really go a long way. So yes, I do very much appreciate that and would encourage you to use it if anything. Now also I would love to be able to suggest that you also follow me on Instagram, where you can also find me, and I do have a vlogging channel where I post to whenever I feel like it. But with that said, the next review after this should be the Google Pixel 7 Pro, which I actually just got very recently and I'm super excited to talk about it. But yeah, with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching, and until next time, enjoy.